Hi, I'm David Broadbent and welcome to the Chaddy Enders. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune in, whether you are listening or watching. It is very much appreciated. Each week I am joined by somebody who has a connection to Oldham Athletic, be a former player or manager or owner or somebody that's had an association with the club in any way. And we sit down and we talk about their time at Latics, the memories, the good, the bad, the happy and the sad. As always, a huge thank you to our three sponsors, to NFL Weekends, to AC Tyres and to Eden Creative. You can follow them all on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, either at NFL Weekends, at AC Tyres or at Eden Creative UK. A big thank you to all of those for their continued support. It's massively appreciated. Today's guest made 89 appearances for the club, scoring 6 goals. He joined us in May 2009 as a scholar, came through the youth system at Boundary Park before making his debut in the January of 2011. He left the club in January 2014, making the move to Brentford, and has gone on to, to great things, playing regularly in the Premier League for Burnley and also becoming an England international. It's our absolute pleasure to welcome James Tarkowski. Tarky, thanks so much for joining us. First up, kind of lockdown at the moment. You're still playing and still going to work every day. How are things for you? Do you get tested every day? What's it like at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's twice a week at the minute. It's been chopping and changing depending on how severe the outside world is. Depends on how we're sort of treated inside our club. So testing sort of drops to once a week briefly, but then once the cases surged again, so did our testing. So I'm one of the fortunate ones who's getting to work through this really. So I say I'm fortunate to be out there playing football every week, and hopefully fans back watching us soon, which would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take you back in time a little bit now.
Okay.
2009, which is weird for me because I don't think you're that old, but
I feel it now.
2009. How did you end up at Oldham in the youth setup there? How did you come about winding up at Boundary Park?
Unusual circumstances, I'd say. I was at Oldham as a kid, so Tony Philskirk knew me as a very young lad. Left to go to Blackburn, didn't work out there, played some Sunday League, went to a bit of men's football, and then a teacher called Paul Ogden at my school was just trying to get me back involved in like a professional setup and said, why don't you come to Oldham and train? So end of under 15s, I was there briefly, and then it sort of the season ended a little bit. So I went back under 16s, just signed, and then I broke my leg. So for most of the under 16 season, I didn't really kick a ball at all. Got back briefly near the end of under 16 season. It was between me and a lad called, I think he's called Micah or Mika, and I'd played with this lad at county team, very good, athletic, was quite liked of quite a few teams. It was between me and him to get a YTS, and fortunately Tony had seen enough of me growing up as a kid and in the probably a brief under 16 period to give me a contract.
And you mentioned Tony there, Tony Philskirk. I assume everyone listening will know. So was Tony kind of like, he was your first, you got there as a YT, and that's under Tony, isn't it?
Yeah, Tony and Mick Priest. So it was definitely an eye-opener. I remember for the first pre-season, I thought I'd done a bit in the off-season running around, and I was a country mile off it. Lads were flying past me. I was probably at the back of the whole team with the goalkeepers, which is everyone will tell you is quite embarrassing. So it was a real eye-opener for me to sort of realise how to get me actually sort of knuckle down and start to work hard and not just think I was working hard.
And there's quite a few lads in that youth team that you formed a pretty close bond with. We have a mutual friend who's helped me a lot with research for this podcast, in Kyle Riley. And Kyle said that when you were in the youth team together, you had plenty of nights out with like yourselves, you, Kyle, Kirk Miller, Carl Winchester, and Ryan Burns, and it was quite a close-knit group.
It was a very close-knit group, probably more so in my second year. The first year was tough. The second years were a bit tough on us first years. Good group of lads, some good lads in there who were still friends, but they're a bit tough on us. So only once I got into my second year, and we were the old lads, and we could start to pick on the first years that we started to gel a little bit. But yeah, as you say, plenty of nights out around Oldham as kids, learning our way in the game and learning our way as men. So very good times, and obviously the Irish lads all lived together, so them three together were just bonkers. I'm surprised I spent that much time with them really, because I don't see myself as being as bonkers as them three, but they were good lads.
And I believe that no matter what night out you had, wherever in Oldham you'd go, be it for a quiet night out somewhere or in the centre of town, you'd get in on the Monday morning and Tony would already know where you'd been and what you'd done.
He would always know. He'd always know. He wouldn't always let on that he knew. He'd just ask a little question about what we did at the weekend and what we've been up to, but he always knew. I don't know how. He had eyes everywhere somehow, but he always knew if we'd been out, which was most weekends as kids, to be fair.
And I mean, you had a great role model because I believe that it was Chris Taylor that was appointed as almost like supervisor to take you all under his wing.
He couldn't have picked anyone better to take us under his wing. For a night out in Oldham, there's one man that wants to take you out. It's Chris Taylor. Taylor was great. He was still very close to him now. He was great there. And he did take us under our wing for a night out here and there. But he was still a role model because he was one of the lads who came through the youth team and done really well. So for us, it was something we actually looked up to for a while to see where we could be. So I say role model, but also it took us under his wing and showed us the ropes.
So when you were in the youth team, looking up towards the first team, who were the sort of senior pros that you looked up to, if you like? Who were you again, trying to get out of the team, really? Who were you looking to displace?
I always remember Tony telling us to look. We always just sit in the stands. We used to play our game in the morning and we'd go and sit in the stands and watch the first team if they were at home. And Tony always used to tell me to watch Sean Gregan. Because at that age, Griggs wasn't moving very well, but he could still dominate a game with his voice, with his physicality, and the way he read the game. So Tony was always the first on to say, watch how Griggs does it. Took a lot of lessons from him. I remember early on, we played Leeds in League One. And I don't know if he said something to Beckford in the tunnel or gripped him up or something in the tunnel happened. And it's one of the worst I'd seen Beckford because at that time, we had to be getters in League One. And Griggs, he just put the fear in him somehow in the tunnel, and Beckford was awful all game. So we sort of got an early insight of how to put the fear into another player from Griggs, who was probably a bit of a master at it.
Brilliantly that season. I remember the return game at Ellen Road. Exactly the same thing happened. After about 5 minutes, Oldham were attacking, and you hear a massive shout from all the Leeds fans behind the other goal. Of course, the ball and all the officials are running the pitch, and you look round to see what's gone on. And Sean Gregan stood there, and just Jermaine Beckford's just sort of sat down, looking round. He definitely had it on Jermaine Beckford.
It's a bit easy in the It's probably only 2 cameras in the stadium. You can get away with that kind of stuff then.
Yeah, you can't do that now, can you?
No, not so much. Not so much.
I was also told a story whereby the then Oldham chairman, Simon Corney, would like to get involved in training and would challenge the youth team to a crossbar challenge that I believe made you a few quid.
I know, surprising that Corney was giving money away at that time the way he was. I think it's a little treat for us. You don't earn hardly any money as a YTS, so I think he'd come once or twice a year and put like a little competition on. If you managed to win, you'd get a bit of cash or some kind of prize. And I think I hit the crossbar. I think it was a weak foot competition and hit the crossbar from maybe not from the halfway line, but it was hitting the crossbar. And I think I managed to win once. So a little bit of a cash prize from Simon, which later on in the years was probably a bit harder to come by.
I was going to say, did he ask for that back when you left?
Yeah, he asked for a refund. Try and finish off that stand.
Yeah. So you've come through the youth team. You are doing particularly well, and you get to January 2011 and make your first team debut, coming on for Neil Trotman against, of all clubs, Brentford. Do you remember much about your debut?
Not really at all, no. I really don't. It was just a blur. I think it might have been 10, 12 minutes. Trots came off injured. I think we were 2-0 up at the time. They chucked me on. And I think Robbie Simpson scored for Brentford at the time. I might be wrong there, but I seem to remember Robbie Simpson mentioning something about them scoring for Brentford. So no, complete blur, apart from the fact that we won. And just the adrenaline sort of running through your body for them 10 minutes and just not knowing where to stand or what to say or what to do, really. Just hoping to survive for 12 minutes, and I managed to do so.
How was it breaking into the first team squad? Were they, was it an accepting bunch? So, like on your first away trips, did you have to do the initiation? Were you singing songs on chairs in hotels?
To be fair, the first team were great. I think when Dave Penny was in charge and I was a YTS, I found I sort of struggled to sort of get to know any of the first team or get anywhere near them. But then once Dickoff took over, maybe me coming of age a little bit and being a bit more around the reserve team, I used to mingle in a bit, but being around them was a great experience. My song, I sang an Oasis song, which was horrible from what I remember.
No, you're
And
from Manchester. You've got to do that. It's like the Wall.
yeah, but they really picked up on. I think because I was so nervous throughout the song, I had my hand on me zipping my pocket, and I was just zipping it up and down, and it was something that got picked up on. So that was so that was brought up over and over again after that. But what a great experience! Sort of came out the blue as well. I remember Tony just pulling me probably the day before they were due to travel to Plymouth, which is of all places to go on your first away trip. It was a fair journey on a coach. Just telling me that I was training with the first team the day after, to go and sort of get myself ready for the after to travel down. So came out of the blue, and I say what a great experience.
And you're not long after your first start came, and that was away at Leyton Orient. Now, when I was looking at this game and looking like back at your career and your time at Latics, do you know you marked Harry Kane that game?
I do remember that. Yeah, I'm a bit of a football nerd, to be honest. So I could probably name you half the team from that game. A very young Harry Kane. I think he must have been 17 at the time, maybe.
Yeah, he was. He was on loan at Orient, wasn't he? It was like his first loan spell.
Yeah, well, he just made a donation to them recently. Did he sponsor the shirt or something?
He sponsored their shirts this season, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do remember that. And I think we conceded one from about 35 yards out. Ben Amos let it go for his hands, which wasn't like him at all. So. No, he's a good keeper, but to be fair. It was a great experience, good game. Ruben Hazel alongside me, he sort of coached me through the whole game. And he was another role model, to be honest. When I sort of stepped up to the first team, he was someone who guided me along. I was still his boot boy, so I'd play the game and I'd be cleaning his boots after it as well.
Who was your roommate in the hotels on the first few trips away?
I had quite a few. When you were young, like you sort of get flung around anyone who's sort of spare. So I was with Big Johnny Zamboto for a few. He was a great guy, to be fair. If you looked at him on a football pitch, you would have thought miserable, but getting off the football pitch, he was brilliant. Richie Jones was my roommate for a few, and as I got older, it worked. I think I ended up rooming with Wesel for quite a while, which is probably no surprise to you. We were like chuckle brothers, throwing each other around. So I think it was mainly Wesel when we got a bit older. I was rooming with Richie. Do you ever hear the story when Richie got sent home from the training session on a Friday before the game?
Go on.
So details I'm not great with. We turn up. We rather than train at the training ground, we used to travel, then train like away. So we'd go to like a Crawley's training ground or Grimsby, wherever we were going. And we turned up to this training ground, and we did like a little box or whatever. Then we'd go into pick the team, and this is the team who's starting. They'd go and do set pieces, and Richie weren't starting, and he wasn't concentrating when the team were doing set pieces. And Tags or Dickoff said something to him, and it kicked off. They had a massive argument with each other, back and forth, to and fro. Richie stormed off, got the coach, went back to the hotel. He was in my room, and then before I know it, he's packing his bags and he's on a train back home. He's been shipped off back home. He only just got down there, and he'd been shipped off back home on the train because he had a big argument about not starting.
I mean, on the plus point, room to yourself that night, so that's
all
right.
Lucky me, eh? Lucky me. And then who else in my room? What was the centre half called? Whose dad was a player as well? Andy Toddy.
Oh yeah, right? yeah. Colin Todd was his dad, who was manager. Yeah.
And so I roomed with him once. I think it was maybe before like a Bristol Rovers. I don't know why I remember that. And he sat up. He had his arse against the wall, his legs up in the air, and he must have just been like draining all the fluid out of his legs. And he must have sat there for about 45 minutes. I don't know if it helped him or not. I just let him do it. I wasn't arguing with him, so I just let him do it, let him crack on.
One thing that was evident, because obviously I was at the club at the time as well, so one thing that was evident under Paul Dickoff was that there was a great team spirit, and a lot of lads that sort of stayed in touch and are still friends now and still see each other now. So I spoke to James Weslowski, and we interviewed Crofty a couple of weeks ago. I know that you still speak to both of them, and they all said that you've got to mention Jed Coyne to Tarky. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, Jed Coyne was kitman for a while, wasn't he? And he was quite the character.
Jobs. He had quite a few job roles. I think he came from being a groundsman at City, I think. And I think Dickoff just took sort of like wanted to help him out. He came as a bit of a volunteer, and he was just doing bits and bobs. One week he'd be cleaning boots, next week he'd be carrying skips to the coach, then he'd be cleaning the seats in the stand. He had all sorts of jobs. But to be fair, me and Wezzo sort of took him under our wing a little bit, and we'd go and play snooker with him. We'd go and have a bit of food and treat to a bit of food. And he sort of quite where was in the end. He was a very interesting character, you would say. But we loved being around him. Huge City fan, obsessed with City. He couldn't understand if anyone had a bad word to say about City, and he was so delusional that City were the greatest team ever and everyone else was the worst team ever. We watched a derby with him once. Dean Thurman lived with Matt Smith and Wezzo in the same little sort of house they had in Prestwich. We watched a derby day in there, and I've never seen a man so angry in my life. And United won, and Wezzo didn't even like United or City, but Wezzo was over celebrating his face and he was losing his mind. Quite scary actually, because he was that obsessed with Man City that you wouldn't want to sort of upset him too much because something could go a bit wrong. So very, very interesting man, and I believe he's ended up at quite a few different clubs now. Didn't he release something on Lee Johnson, like his phone number or something? Wasn't that the rumour?
He did something, didn't he, when he when he fell out with
he was always tweeting about one fella at City that he didn't like, and I think the club told him off quite a few times for it, and then he'd delete his Twitter, then he'd make another one. Like he'd had like the Coinmeister General, and he'd delete that one. Then he just like Coinmeister General 1 and think that no one understand who it was. But I think he had a fallout with Lee Johnson. I think he might have even put his phone number on Twitter or something in the end. So a very interesting man, but we had some fun times with him.
It was a great team spirit there. Now I know that at the time under Paul Dickoff, you missed the Forest and the Liverpool games through injury, but in and around the squad there, and came back to play against Everton. So big games for someone sort of your age, and by that point established in the first team, and looking to make a name for yourself.
I think by saying injury, you're being a bit kind. I was just a sub. I was just sub. I was sort of in for 2 games, and I just missed 10. But then, as soon as nothing against Dickoff, to be fair, as soon as Dickoff did leave, Tony Filskirk took over temporary charge, and he just pulled me and said, "You're going to play for me no matter what, so don't worry about it. Go and enjoy. Go and show what you can do." And it just took a bit of belief. I think I always knew I could play, but just having someone who believed in me like Tony did to go and put me straight into the team, especially at that time of year, because we were fighting against relegation. We had a massive cup game coming up, and he put me straight in for both of them. So huge experiences for me. Obviously, I've always mentioned how much Tony's done for me and things like that. I really appreciate, because that really did sort of kickstart my career again, really. Because it was a frustrating few years of being in and out of the team and showing what I could do for 2 or 3, and then sort of getting dropped because the team wasn't doing well, and not necessarily myself, I felt. But as a young lad, you're always sort of the first person out the team.
And for anyone that doesn't know, Tony, of course, is at Burnley now. So do you still see bits of him? Are you at the same training ground?
Yeah, it's changed a bit recently. They train at our place, but they're not allowed in the building. They have to go and get changed and eat elsewhere. So we've crossed paths briefly since COVID. But before that, I was seeing him daily. And it's nice to see him enjoying coaching again. Doing a really good job from what I've seen. The under-18 seems to be doing really well there. So he's obviously doing something right.
Excellent stuff. One of your last games at Oldham was probably, looking back, one of the most memorable games of the last 10 years. The beating Peterborough 5-4. What a game that was. What a comeback that was. And the brief genius of Gary Harkins.
Yeah, Zidane. That's what they called him, Zidane. That was some game. We played awful as well at the start. I think we must have been 3-0 down maybe, then 4-1 down. We were just gifting them goals left, right and centre. And then out of nowhere, we just... I think did Kasunga score the winner?
Yeah.
Kasunga scored the winner. Jeebsy scored a couple. Who else scored today? Do you remember the goals?
David Worrell scored.
Worrell scored as well. Did Wezzo score? Did Wezzo score?
I don't know. I think you remember, because he doesn't score that many, Wezzo, does he?
No. He probably tackled the floor and it bumped up and probably just dribbled into the net. I feel like Wezzo did score that day, but definitely Gary. I don't know if Jeebsy started the game or came on, but second half of football, I've never seen a player like it. He was unbelievable. And then it was something. I think we got one back. It was 3-1. We got one back, and then 2 minutes later, I think Groundsy or David Mellor for just a throw across the pitch into our box, and they just tapped in. And it was like, oh, there we go. Game over this time. We just got back into it and thought we had a slight chance, and we just gifted them another goal. And as you say, out of nowhere, we just managed to just start scoring. But it's got to be one of the greatest comebacks in League One history.
That was fantastic, wasn't it? So at Oldham, the two main managers you played under were Paul Dickoff and Lee Johnson. What were the sort of biggest differences between the two?
Well, both. I think that both their first jobs. Lee Johnson went for a really young side, inexperienced, but a lot of energy, and we played some very good football at times under Lee Johnson. But the inexperience would cost us, so we'd play really well, but not get the result. I remember we played Preston away and battered them, but they had an experienced team and they ended up winning 2-1. Dickoff was he could lose his temper, but he wasn't always losing his temper. He was quite in control.
Is that what he had Jerry Taggart for?
Yeah, he had tags. The tags coming up to me and Kieran Lee sucking a chicken wing, talking about stopping crosses. And he was just sucking the meat off this wing, and he was just throwing the bones away. He was talking to me and Kieran Lee about stopping crosses. To be fair, I thought they both did pretty good jobs at Oldham, to be honest. Obviously, it was always a battle. We went through periods of players not getting paid and not always having the players that you wanted in the team, and things happened. But I thought both managers did really well. Just certain things went against Dickoff that probably a bit unfortunate at the end. But as in my experience with Lee Johnson was really good. We played some great stuff. Just as I say, the inexperience of the cost us in the end.
And from Oldham, you went to Brentford. I remember being at the club at that time. Was Brentford the sort of main option? Were there all? I mean, sort of for the last 12 months of your spell at the club, there were always kind of rumours as to different clubs were watching you and who was coming in. So how did the move to Brentford come about?
There wasn't even on the list of the teams that were available, to be honest. I think I got pulled in around November time, and the club was struggling financially. They had the stand that they were trying to get built and finish off, but they didn't have any money. They sort of took pub in November and said, "We've got interest, so we're going to sell you in November to the highest bidder." So I think Wolves was another team. They were in League One at the time that was mentioned around looking at me, and then probably 4 days before the window shut, I'd still not been told what was going on or where I was going, and they pulled me in and said that Brentford had a bid accepted. It's not even a team I'd even thought about. I'd not even thought about moving away from home. So then I just simply said, go down, have a look, speak to the manager and see what you think. So I jumped on a train down there and had a look around. And to be honest, it was my only option in the end. There was no other bids accepted for any of the team. So it was there or nothing. But from what I saw there, it seemed like a great club moving forward. So it seemed like the right decision. I did want to come back. I was due to come back on loan.
That was my next question. Yeah, that was my next question.
It was bizarre, really. I don't know whether Brentford were just being a bit sly about it and just saying, "Oh, we'll send him back on loan," because it was a big thing for me. I lived at home all my life, not living with Dad's house. I had a 5-minute drive up Broadway to get to the stadium, so I was always dead comfortable. So moving all the way to London was a big deal for me. So they said I can go back on loan, and then I think they just thought, we'll tell him that, and then we'll just recall him straight away, and he ain't got any choice, and I've got to go down. And that's pretty much what happened. I turned up to Oldham. I think it was my first day's training back or second day's training back. Lee Johnson put me in and said, Brentford have recalled you. They've got an injured centre half. They've got a game tomorrow. Get down there today. So I just jumped in the car. Joe quickly nipped home, packed a bag, and set off down the M6 to head down there. And that was it. I was gone.
So with that then, how does it work? So you go down to Brentford. Did they help you find somewhere to live? Were you in a hotel for a bit first, or did you know people
I knew no one. I literally knew no one. I was in a hotel for 3 or 4 days, and part of the agreement is that they would pay for an apartment for the first 6 months, I think it was. Maybe to the end of that first season, I was covered. So I had someone in charge. He was a great guy called Peter Gillen, and he was in charge of looking after all the lads. So he took me to an apartment, viewed it, perfect, right on the Thames, and said, "Yeah, that's me. I'm in." And 2 days later, I was in there. So it worked out all well in the end. It was just a bit of a mad experience just to go from thinking I was going to be in Manchester for at least another 4 or 5 months to there you go, you're gone. See you later.
Yeah, especially at such a young age and moving away from home for the first time. But I guess sort of did that help in your career in that you were like, right, you're now sort of forced to be away from home and independent and just kind of sort of stronger, if you like.
Yeah, it's probably when I saw my biggest progression, really. As I say, I was always comfortable at all, and I loved being there because it was, as I say, it was just down the road from my parents, so everything was really easy for me. I could spend all the time with my family and my friends as I wanted. So sort of taking myself out of my comfort zone to being on my own and having to look after myself, cooking, cleaning, everyday things which I never had to think about. It seemed to really bring me on and sort of had to grow up. But then also it really brought on my game as well. So it was probably the right thing to do in the end. But when you're first making that decision, it's not really something you want to do because you say you are comfortable at home and everything's nice and cozy there.
So I can't have you on without talking about England. So the people that I know that have kind of said that we're interviewing you today have all said, right, we've got to ask these questions about England. So,
Okay.
how do you
I've
find?
not been there for a while, so whatever you ask, I might have forgot talking about it.
So when you got your first call up, how do you find out? How do you find out you've been called into the squad?
It was rumoured in the papers for a few days, so I'd had an inkling that it might happen, but you're never too sure. And then I turned up to training. I think the squad was announced at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I turned up to training. The gaffer pulled me and Nick Pope in. So once me and him got, because me and him were both touted at the time to get called up, and he just said, "Congratulations, boys, you've been called up. You'll get a message this afternoon. Well done, well earned," and that was it. And then I got a message from someone who works at England regarding like where we're getting picked up to turn up to training and what we'll need. And then the manager sent me a message maybe on the day we're due to arrive, just saying, "Looking forward to meeting you. Congratulations." So sort of that's the way it goes, really.
Is it? I guess it must be difficult to replicate a club type scenario. So, did you have to do the initiations again and that sort of thing in your first
No,
squad?
no, none of that, thank God. You sort of turn up and you don't all arrive at the same time. It's sort of staggered for over a few hours. So you turn up and throw your bags into your room, and then there's sort of like a hub there where there's sort of food, little social areas, and you just sort of wander down there. And there, me and Pope held hands for the first few days. We just knocked on each other's room and walked down together. We came as a duo. It was nice to have someone there with me because I didn't really know many lads. I knew a couple of lads, but not well enough to sort of that I'd ever texted them before or ever sort of had any kind of social event with them. So to have Popey there with me was really nice because we could sort of introduce ourselves, get to know people. But what a great experience! So I loved every minute of it. Just being around, having the food. The food's fantastic. You've not had food like it. It's the best food you'll ever taste.
And is
I don't
that
know whether it's because I was that excited that I was there that the food tasted better, but the food is unbelievable.
and is that the hotel at St George's Park? That's the Hilton there.
Yeah, but then you've got the England seniors have got their own chef that's sort of in charge of everything. So the spread is fantastic. It's like a wedding. it's like a wedding. Every time you go down there, there's so many options. It was just dangerous though because if you're not playing, which I didn't play the first game I didn't play when I went there, you're just scoffing your face and you're eating desserts, 3-course meals, and you just feel like you're eating all the time. So it can be quite dangerous.
And then, when did you find out that you were making your England debut?
I think I found out a couple of days before. We played Netherlands away. The first game was Netherlands away, and in that game, 2 centre halves came off injured, and they ended up pushing Eric Dyer back from midfield centre half. And I was sitting there thinking, like, why am I here? This is disappointing. Like, that what a chance to put me on that is. And then I think the Italy game was maybe 2 days later, and he just pulled me in probably the day before. He said just to let you know so you can tell your family that you're going to be starting. So it's quite nice and really. So you can some people might not like it that way, but I was quite fortunate. I got to tell my family, and I could prepare myself a little bit. So I was ready to go.
And were you a bag of nerves for it? Do you get nervous before games?
Yeah, I do, but not so much anymore. But for England, obviously, I was very nervous. But you somehow managed to just sort of block it out a little bit when you're sort of taking all like the crowd in and you stood there singing the national anthem. You're that concerned with your performance that you sort of push your nerves back to the back of your mind and concentrate on that. Let's do what you've trained to do all your life and go and perform, which that night I managed to do.
Did you already know the anthem? Were you blasting it out, or were you like mouthing along to it?
No, actually, I had to practice. I had to like go over the words in my head a few times. Because if it's on telly or like if it had been like a tournament, I've probably been on audio and a few drinks and like you sing it in a pub with a load of fellas or you sing it on audio at a bar or whatever. So you're just a bit pissed up singing it. So to actually stand there seriously and sing it, and then the camera comes past your face and it gets quite close, so you don't want to mess up the words then because everyone sees it then. So I went over it a few times. Fair, I had a rehearsal in the Netherlands game, so I had a little rehearsal before the actual main event.
Awesome stuff, and obviously still playing week in, week out, and obviously the tournament this year. I guess you never know, do you?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm doing all I can do, and you just want to try and be involved again after being in it before. So we'll see what happens. I'm not too concerned with it, but I would like to be there.
And now we are going back to Oldham and a series of fairly quicker questions to just to get your. We're asking these to every sort of former player that comes on.
Okay.
So, best player you played with at Oldham?
Oh, that's a tough one. I was there quite a while. Can I name two? Is that
Yeah,
or is
go
that a
for it.
bit?
Go on. Yeah, go on.
So when I first joined, there's got good players there, but one who stood out who sort of went under the radar was Kieran Lee.
Yeah,
He was an exceptional player. His decision making was incredible. Never give the ball away, but he just played in his own little world. His nickname was Bare Min because he literally did the bare minimum to just survive being on this planet. He'd rock in at, say we were training at 10:30, he'd rock in at 10:29 and he'd be gone by 11:30. And that was Kieran Dunn, but he was an exceptional player. And then later on, I'd probably got to say Jose. An exceptional talent. He was just an incredible player, which obviously the fans all knew themselves anyway. I remember when he signed his new deal and the eruption around the stadium when you probably announced it.
it was me that announced it. Yeah, I was absolutely buzzing. Paul Dickoff phoned me that morning and said, "Right, we've got something we need to do today. We've got him signed to a deal." And the idea of announcing it on the pitch at like 1:03 and everyone singing his song was like,
it was incredible. You would have thought we won the league. I've never seen anything like it. It's the biggest year I've seen at Boundary Park anyway.
Yeah, he was absolutely really popular, wasn't he, at Oldham? Really popular.
Yeah, he was. Rightly so as well.
Funniest lad in the dressing room?
Oh, that's a tough one once again.
Again, you were at the club a while, so there's more than
one.
Yeah,
so I'm trying to scan through all the different squads that I would have been through. Connor Brown was funny. Connor Brown was hilarious. He was such a character.
That's what Crofty said.
Yeah, Connor Brown was at Crofty and Jose had their little duo together, going around causing mayhem. And then Wezzo, my mate Wezzo. We spent that much time together. I had to be able to laugh with him.
Mate, I've got to say that you and Wezzo both had dogs at the same sort of time. And I remember coming over to see Wezzo when he was in Shrewsbury. And me, you and Wezzo went out and eventually you'd brought your dog over for a play date with Wezzo.
Yeah, and on that same day, his dog had its first period on my arm. It was disgusting. It climbed on me, had a brand new white t-shirt on. I just treated myself to it. And his dog climbed up and had its period on my shoulder.
Nice. What a lovely story.
What a wonderful memory of Wezzo's dog having a period on my arm.
Beautiful. So, on a slightly similar vein, not to the dog period bit, but the loosest cannon in the dressing room, who would you try and not have a night out with?
Oh, probably all the ones I just mentioned just before then. Brownie and Johnson Clark Harris, they were a lively duo, I'd say. The Irish boys, but I spent a lot of nights out with them, so I probably can't say that because I'm trying to avoid a night out, but I spent a lot of time with them. I've got to say Brownie and Johnson Clark Harris, them two together were just crazy. Good lads, but they were a bit loose.
Your best game for the club?
My best personal game or
your best personal game?
Probably the Preston game that I mentioned. It sort of put me in sort of the spotlight. I remember just going, because at that time when you're playing for Oldham, you're not really on telly at all, or very, very rarely. So I think it was a Monday night game, and I went back and turned my phone on, and I've never had so many messages saying well done. So that's probably the best one. The FA Cup game, the Everton one, At home, I felt like I played pretty well, but definitely that Preston game just really sort of, it was like a massive opportunity for me, and it sort of pushed me into the spotlight, as you say.
I'd never seen so many new haircuts on the same day ever as that Preston game. I think because it was on TV, I think all the squad rocked up that morning, haircut ready for the cameras.
Yeah, it's right though, because you're never really on TV when you're in League One. You're rarely seen, so to know you're going to be on the telly, you've got to make yourself look your best.
Absolutely. So on the flip side of that, worst personal game for the club?
Oh, I had a few. Jesus. I think probably I've got to pick Rochdale away. I think their lad scored a hat trick, the striker. I give away a pen and I got sent off. So I think that's probably a 1 out of 10 in the paper, maybe a 0 if you're lucky. That, yeah, by far. There was a few. I had a few tough days, but that's got to be the worst one for me. It's when Shefki Kuchi scored the goal from 50 yards, 60 yards out, which is probably the best goal I've ever seen.
And that was probably going to be, that was on the list for the next question. I was going to ask the best goal scored while you were at Oldham, and then your best goal.
My best goal at Oldham?
You scored a few.
Yeah,
6, I think it was.
Yeah, probably just my first one. It was awful. It was a long throw that I just headed from the edge of the 18, and so I loved the goalkeeper. But I was still a YTS then, so to score as a YTS, that's got to be that one. And then probably Shefki's goal. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but there's one goal I've never forgot, because it was pretty much stood on the byline, 60 yards out, and for no reason just volleyed it. He went flying into the back of the net, and we had the full side of the Rochdale Stadium with fans. So probably that one. Yeah.
Shefki was it's fair to say Shefki was a bit of a beast, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. He'd do core in an ice bath. He was crazy. He was a nice guy, but he'd do core, then he'd just sit and play Candy Crush for about an hour in there as well.
So the final question I've got for you is, what is your best memory, if you had to pick one, from your time at Oldham?
Oof, best memory. I won't say leaving.
I think you leaving might have paid for like some toilets in the new stand or something like that.
Is that all it was? Is that all you got paid for it? Just a couple of portaloos. Best memory. Probably playing at Anfield for Oldham. I mean, we had some good FA Cup runs, to be fair. I think we played Liverpool 3 years in a row.
3 years in a row, yeah.
3 in a row. So I was on the bench at Anfield the first one. I was on the bench again for the second one. So probably when we played there for the third time, even though we got beat, it was still. So maybe the Everton one of the FA Cup games for me. I don't know which one, but one of them.
Nice. Well, one of the games you did well against the Premier League team. Yeah, sounds.
Yeah, well, they're the ones that you. When I was there, that's all. Like, as much as you want to do in the league, you're always desperate to get to the third round of the FA Cup and draw a Premier League team and go and play at their place. So to do it against Liverpool and Everton, I think that's probably the best memories, really. And for the club, really, because they were desperate for the cash.
Yes, it massively, massively helped.
The pressure on us to get them to the FA Cup games, it was huge.
Oh, I remember the week leading up to the Liverpool game when we had like the ground staff, Chris Bailey, were sleeping on the pitch under that massive dome we had on because we had to have the game not postponed.
Yeah, I remember that. I think we even trained on like an indoor arena the day before the City game. It was. We played it. We trained at an indoor arena at Carrington. Dickoff was manager, and he managed to get a contact to go and train indoor. Matt Smith probably had one of the worst training sessions I've ever seen. Then the day after, he went and scored 2 against Liverpool. So don't worry about training. Just concentrate on playing games and scoring goals, like Matt Smith did.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's been brilliant having you on.
It's been nice to reminisce because my memory's crap. So for someone to sort of remind me of a few moments of my life, it's quite nice.
Thank you very much to James Tarkowski for joining us there. Yeah, really enjoyed that. Great to hear not just about his time at Oldham, but also about playing for England. So yeah, big thanks to Tarky for joining us. Also, again, a big thank you to our sponsors, AC Tyres, NFL Weekends, and Eden Creative, and also to Technical Luke, who does all the editing and puts this together, because quite frankly, it is well out of my capacity. So thank you very much to Luke. Thank you to everyone for listening. Massively appreciated. We announce all our guests in advance on Twitter and on Facebook at the Chaddy Enders. If you want to ask any questions to any future guests, then please feel free to get in touch and do so. I've been David Broadbent. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great week. Cheers.